Time to begin with our first stitching of the center bulkhead to the bottom panel. Simply enough, we'd put a wire through the hole in the bulkhead and then bend the two wires down so they can be fed through the two holes in the bottom panel. Just pull them down nice and tightly with a set of pliers so that it's sitting flush with the bottom panel. Now that's where I had a little bit of difficulty with the wire provided. It's pretty stiff wire and it just really doesn't want to bend. If there's any kinks in the wire, it doesn't easily and nicely slide through the holes. So a little bit of working here and there, eventually the wire will slide down through nice and tight so that we can wire it and stitch it up. So a simple couple of twists in the wire, grabbing with the pliers up close, just giving it a twist or two. You'll actually hear a little bit of creaking. This is good. The panels are being pulled nice and tight together. There's only one wire that's going to go through from the bulkhead, the forward bulkhead, through the bottom panel, and of course aligning the tabs into the holes in the bottom panel. Reaching underneath was a little bit of a problem. Of course, as I'm narrating this right now, I'm wondering why I just didn't slide the whole boat forward off the end of the table so I could see what I was doing by reaching under there, giving that wire a twist, grabbing with the pliers to do the final twist and tighten the forward bulkhead down to the bottom panel. Time to move on to panel number 1 being stitched to the bulkheads. So again, pushing a wire through, shaping it somewhat like a large staple, and then just temporarily holding that in place. Now we can start aligning the holes from the bottom panel and adding holes to panel number 1 and start stitching from the center of the boat out to both ends. So the process that's going to be repeated is to cut yourself a piece of wire 2 to 2.5 inches long with needle nose, fashion it into the shape of a large staple, feed it through the two holes, and slide the boat off to the edge so you can reach underneath. Give those two wires a bit of a twist by hand and then grab it with pliers and give it a final twist or two, and the two panels will tighten up together. And then one by one, working away from the center of the boat towards the stern at this point in time. It's just align the panel, drill the hole, make your staple, fashion it, slide it in, tighten it up, and pull the panels together. Next hole, next staple, feed it in, tighten it up, and repeat until you reach the end of the boat. And I've finally reached the transom end of both panels number 1. And once these are tightened up, I'm just going to go back and give maybe each one of them a little bit more of a twist, because as you work your way to the ends, the ones towards the middle are a little bit looser and could use another half twist just to tighten them up. And now repeating the process, I'm working from the middle bulkhead towards the bow end, drilling the hole, making your staples, and stitching together. As we're only a few holes away from the very bow, it's getting a little more difficult to have these two panels get pulled together because they're being twisted and torqued at the same time. But as you just do one wire, go back, maybe tighten up the one behind, it all starts to take shape. Time to move on to the difficult task of bringing the bow ends of panel numbers 1 together. So I'm just going to feed a few wires through the holes in the top of the panels that were drilled prior to assembly, and I'm just going to use these to just gently work and try and pull and twist the wires so that the very ends of panels number 1 come together. And then with all of the wires loosely fitted in, we can start to just pinch the ends together, tighten up one wire, pinch some more, tighten up the other one. This is just designed so we can hold it all together. Using the pliers, you can add a little bit of force, and as you see, the very bow starts to pinch together. And an important thing here is that we're not pulling one panel towards the other panel. They both have to come towards the middle equally so that they end up level and flush on the top edge of those panels. Some of the holes in the bottom edge of panel number 1 had to be re-drilled. It was just very difficult to feed the wire through because when we drilled through originally, we kind of drilled straight through, but as I've said before, this wire is really difficult to feed through when it's not perfectly in line and straight. And with the bow end of panels number 1 all finished, it's time to move on to the rear seat support bulkhead. So I just temporarily placed it in there with the tabs and the holes in the panels, so I can drill a few holes on either side of the panel. And once I've got all the holes all drilled, then I will take it out, add my wires, and then slip it back into place. So here again, I'm adding the wires through, forming them into staples. Got 5 wires, I believe, in this panel that I need to do. So because the wire is not very flexible to feed it through after the fact, you need to feed them all through now. And the real trick right now is to feed all 5 sets of wires through these holes little by little by little. You can't push it down, the wire kinks, you're going to have to take that wire out and replace it because it's just not going to go through the hole if it's got a bit of a kink in it. So one by one, side to side, just kept working them through, pulling them through with the pliers, lining them up until eventually all of the wires were poking through the bottom side of the 3 panels. Then I could give each one of them a good yank with the pliers from the underside, twist them up and tighten them up and pull that bulkhead panel flush to the hull panels. And the last piece to go in will be the transom. So I've aligned the transom with small notches that are provided on the hull panel and the transom so that it's centered, and then marking on the transom where the holes need to be drilled to align with the hull panels. And again, with all the holes drilled, we pre-wired the transom, put it back into place, making sure that the center notch is lined properly before tightening up all of the wires. I did actually have to loosen up a few of the wires because if the holes were not perfectly aligned, when you tighten up the wires, it pulled the transom a little off center. Just double checking that everything is still on center. Just going to go back and tighten up all of the wires. And as you can see, I probably have a little excess wire here, but that was kind of needed to be able to feed it through the transom and then down through the hull panels. We'll cut all these off later. I have been poked a few times and have already drawn first blood on this boat. And then tightening this one last wire here. The wire actually broke, which meant I had to try and pull the broken piece of wire out and feed a new piece through. I didn't want to have to take the whole transom off just to feed that one piece of wire back through. So with a bit of frustration and a little bit of work, pushing, pulling, I was able to feed that wire back through the transom and down through the hull panel. And as you can see, it really doesn't easily slide through the hole. It takes quite a bit of pulling and prying and forcing it to actually slide. So I can retwist and rewire up that last hole in the transom. Well, I hope you've been enjoying following along this build and other builds on OrcaBoats. Be sure to subscribe to stay up to date with new videos as we upload them.